Hey, what's up? It's your boy KB, and this is maybe you needed to hear this today. Um, this is a little space that I've created to just talk about change in life and kind of talking about my story in growth and development the past few years. In July 30th of 2026, which is coming up in a few months for me, will be 2 years that I quit drinking alcohol. Um, and, that's just kind of one facet of stuff. And this isn't like a preachy thing because, this isn't, I'm not going to talk about you should quit anything. I'm not going to talk about politics. I just want to talk about real things that I think are really important and, could help people, could help anybody of any age, color, sex that you choose or whatever. It doesn't matter because, these are just, I feel, tried and true things. And if I'm going to learn along the way, it's not about me having all the answers right now. But anyways, I have no idea. But I know what's worked for me these past couple years in getting my ground and like finding out who I am again, or really for the first time. I'm divorced, single. Um, I have children, more than one. I'm just not going to really get into the number right now. I'm a very active father. By the grace of God, I get the opportunity to do that. For the most part, and during summer, it's like 1 week, right? 1 week, and that's not the point. Just that telling a little bit about me and where I'm coming from, and what my priorities are. I have a father who is 70, and I like take care of him. My stepmother passed away a few years ago, and that was really hard on our family and him especially. He's twice a widower. My mother passed away when I was 18, 20 years ago this year in January. And that grief has taken so long, but it's tough. I'd say my biggest regret in that is that my mother never got to see my kids. But, I definitely believe that she is here and, and around me, and the universe, I guess, in the way I think about stuff. So, but, and I can see her in them sometimes, which is funny. And, the things that are around her sometimes, like when the wind blows, you'll just like feel it, and it's like, oh, that's her. And I smile, I don't cry really anymore about that, because I don't really feel fearful about it anymore. I mean, granted, that was 20 years ago, so time is time. But so one of the biggest things that I had to do, I was thinking this, and that's why I wanted to hurry up and get this down on a video before I forgot about it, is that it sucks because you have to pay the tax for being a dumbass sometimes for a while. Yeah, I know sometimes it feels like, everybody's always mad at me, everybody always blames me for this and blah blah blah. And you're not always wrong, and you probably do have some really good character, characteristics that are helpful and people like about you, and like even when you're at your worst, I guess is what I'm saying, because 'cause of course, everybody has a purpose in this if they want one, and a lot of substance abuse, alcoholism, any type of an addiction, is usually the symptom. Not usually, it is a symptom of a bigger issue, and that's not knowing, trouble identifying with yourself, and emotions and feelings, and bagging stuff up and not processing emotions properly, and it builds up. It's weird because it's one day you don't just like decide. Nobody decides to have something other than their own best interest control their life. Nobody decides to sign their will to live over to something else, a bag or a bottle, but it's just all of a sudden one day you're like, oh man, I'm screwed. So the thing that I think was the biggest thing is realizing and accepting how much of an ass you were and are, and the things that you brought, like, you really, you did do wrong. If you're suffering from that stuff, like, you're sick, and yes, there are still beautiful things about you. Like, it's not about like a shaming ritual, but it's because it's not about the other people. It's not about anybody else, watching you go through the process. People don't have to look at you and say, oh, but you have to admit, like, and that's putting your pride and your ego aside. Nobody wants to really go through it and be the ass, but like, it's so funny because, like, in our head at the same time we're doing it to ourselves. Like, we're already, like, there's already that voice back there that's like, you suck, everything's your fault, blah blah blah, but then whenever it comes time in a healthy way in a healthy way to admit it, then to go through, like, yeah, maybe I did make some really dumbass decisions, and maybe the way that I'm doing this is wrong, and maybe some of the biggest things in my life are actually killing me instead of making me better. Maybe there's a lot of things that are taking my full potential away from me, and like my family, and who I could and who I want to be. And that first step sometimes is laying your pride and your ego at the door and just being like, okay, here it is. And whenever, like, you're able to do that, it is such a freeing thing. Whenever you're really able to do it, it actually is the best thing that can happen, because it's like you give yourself a chance to, like, step out of that. You've been carrying all that around, and you didn't want to set it down because maybe, like, somebody would see it. But, like, whenever you finally set it down and you're just like, it's beautiful. Because either you want to change or you don't. I know everybody wants to think that they're smarter than it all, and they'll be the one person that's able to figure it out. And it's, there's a lot of people that do just keep going, and then, it's just never quite enough. They never quite get to the bottom that is enough to really put it down. Anything, gambling, but like it ends up whittling, and and then oh man, I couldn't imagine. Like I already know the damage that like I did to my body in a short amount of time. Real stuff that I have papers that could say. I was a diabetic at my worst, and my pancreas had quit working. I was able to keep a job, but like my body was saying like, dude, like what are you doing? And I had to use insulin and every day, like multiple times, and like I'm sticking myself and keeping track of stuff, and I'm just like, dude, when like okay, like this isn't what you want. This isn't, and I knew that for a long time. I was really depressed, and I just thought depression was just like it was just gonna be part of my life for it, and like it's incredible how much better I feel every day. I mean, my worst day is still so much better than my best day. But, not going against my natural self, but, ingesting poison, my body's just constantly playing catch up because, I'm sticking horrible things inside of it. And it's working so hard to get that stuff processed that I can't do anything else. And then it starts, you run a Corvette at 150 for a month straight, you're going to blow the engine up, you know what I mean? And, you just take the time and start trying to give your body like what it needs. And, I started doing smoothies. Like every morning, like I love it. It's kind of like overnight oats, so I do, but whatever. I do other things that like are really helpful, and I sleep at a good time, and it's the best. And that's just a symptom of all the other stuff, the days and months, the weeks of staying true to what I wanted, and not giving up. But like I will say, whenever I started it, and I have the fellowship of AA to thank for a lot of stuff, but there's so much from that like can be used for everybody, and that's kind of like one of the things that like I'm trying to maybe bring out, or some of these like key things that could help everybody. You don't have to follow a certain program or whatever, but I don't know. Change is very important, and nothing changes, and if nothing changes, and you gotta own it, and sometimes you just gotta eat the shit sandwich, and you gotta sit in it, and you have to own it, and then you can move on with the rest of your life. And the rest of your life can be beautiful. There's so much purpose in helping other people and doing things. I mean, it's whenever your head's not full of Play-Doh, you'd be so surprised in like what you can do. I mean, I'm like saving pallets and I want to try and make birdhouses. Like it could end up horrible, I don't know, but I'm gonna try it. And yeah, and you keep one of the things that also like that has helped fill in some time. Like I like learn. If you think of something and you look at something and you're like, man, I wonder how that works, or I wonder more about that. Like we have everything in our pocket. You can learn and watch a podcast about science or history or cars or fashion or there's so much cool stuff out there. I mean, granted, I try to not be negative about like the say it's all slop, and yeah, I mean, and with the AI, who knows what's real, blah blah blah. But I'm focusing on the community, and like right now in my heart, I still feel a strong connection around me. Maybe I'm crazy, but I haven't given up yet. Call me a crazy, call me crazy, but I ain't giving up yet. Yeah. Call me crazy, 'cause I ain't giving up yet. Yeah. Gotta lay it all down, lay it all down, so you can move forward, so you can move forward. So try to forgive yourself, so you can live a new life. Live a new life. So try to forgive yourself, so you can live a new life. Thanks for watching. Hope you had a good time. I know I did. You know, let's grow and do this together. I don't know. Let's try and use time to our advantage. Peace out.